Hey, Soul Stories fam. We're starting a new love journey. Tell us where you're watching from. Don't forget to subscribe and join our family. Now stay with us. The story begins. For the past 2 weeks, Olivia Turner had experienced every possible shade of exhaustion, irritation, and simmering fury known to a woman who was simply trying to live a decent, civilized life in a usually quiet apartment building. One that had recently been turned upside down by the arrival of a neighbor who behaved as though he'd been put on this earth with one sacred mission: to test the limits of human patience. There was drilling into walls at 8 in the morning, sharp enough to feel like it was burrowing into her skull. Hammering at noon made her dishes vibrate. Furniture is being dragged around with the ferocity of someone attempting to relocate an entire continent. The thuds, the thumps, and occasionally the catastrophic boom. No rhythm, no warning, no respect for the known laws of physics. And worst of all, the constant oops he let out every time he caused a disaster. Deep, warm, and absurdly casual, as though mishaps were simply cute little features of his daily routine. At first, Olivia had tried her best to be understanding. She was professional, civilized, modern, someone who believed that anyone moving into a new place had the right to fix things up. She told herself, just a few days. He'll settle soon. But a few days became a week became two, and tonight, the 14th night, Olivia officially reached her breaking point. 11 p.m. The hour when all of Portland seemed to be wrapped in silence, except for apartment 4B, where sound apparently followed its own time zone. Olivia's apartment, 4A, was still lit by her desk lamp, neat, tidy, and filled with the energy of intense focus. On her laptop screen was the most important online meeting of the year, the strategy presentation that could finally earn her the marketing manager position she'd been working toward for over 3 years. Her brown hair was tied neatly back. Her makeup was light but sharp. Her blouse was crisp. Her voice was steady enough that she could feel the precision in every breath she took. Olivia, can you walk us through the second quarter growth plan? Cathode! A monstrous crash erupted from 4B, so loud Olivia genuinely thought a meteor had hit the building, or someone was attempting to break in using a bulldozer. She jolted so hard that the coffee mug in her hand launched forward and splashed straight onto her laptop keyboard. Coffee flooded. The laptop froze. The meeting audio cut out. The screen blacked out as if it had died on the spot. Olivia felt her heart plummet to the bottom of her stomach. She couldn't breathe, couldn't speak, couldn't think. For 3 whole seconds, she just stood there, eyes wide, hands trembling, as if her soul had been vacuumed out of her body. Then she exploded. Oh my God! She rubbed frantically at the keyboard like someone trying to rescue a patient from the brink of death, but the laptop only let out a small, pathetic beep, and then shut down completely. Olivia turned toward the wall between their units. Her face twitched. Her breath burned through her chest like fire. That new neighbor has officially violated every decency law of society. She shot up to her feet. Her face was burning. Her heart was thundering. Her legs marched with the determination of a woman who had officially thrown every ounce of kindness into the trash. She grabbed a hoodie, slid into her slippers, yanked open her door with a slam, and stormed into the hallway like a human hurricane. She pounded on 4B's door with the force of the FBI raiding a mafia safe house. Open this door! 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 15. Olivia lifted her hand for a second round, and she fully intended it to be twice as aggressive when the door swung open, and Olivia froze. Ethan Cole, the man whose catastrophic thud had just destroyed her entire career trajectory, was standing in front of her in a state that could easily explain why her soul might leave her body at any moment. He wasn't wearing a shirt. His hair was wet. Droplets slid from his hair to his neck, down his chest, down his abdomen. Each line of muscle illuminated under the warm hallway light, as if the universe had conspired against Olivia's ability to remain focused. In his hand was a dented cookie tin, looking exactly like a crime scene victim. Hi, he said, his deep, warm voice carrying a steam bath softness, as if he'd just stepped out of a shower in a cologne commercial. Olivia's mouth fell open. No sound came out. In her head, a voice screamed, "Olivia, snap out of it! This is not the time to admire someone's abs." After wrestling herself back into consciousness, she finally burst out, "Are you out of your mind?" Ethan frowned slightly, then gave a small smile. The kind of smile her heart absolutely did not appreciate. "Oh, you mean the noise? I dropped this cookie tin. It's heavier than it looks." Olivia felt on the verge of tears of sheer outrage. "Cookies? Cookies? You caused a disaster tonight because of cookies? Do you have any idea you just ruined the most important meeting of my life?" Ethan leaned against the doorframe, relaxed, as though being yelled at wasn't unpleasant at all, but mildly entertaining. "I didn't mean to. I'm sincerely sorry." His voice was so gentle it only made Olivia want to bang her head against the wall. "I don't need an apology," she snapped. "I need you to stop making noise. Then I'll try to be more careful tomorrow." "Not tomorrow, now." Ethan lifted the dented cookie tin. "But I don't have anything left to drop." Olivia almost choked from the sheer urge to scream without having a word available. She glanced past him into his apartment, and the sight made her hesitate. The place was practically empty. Just one handmade wooden table, a few raw wooden shelves, two unopened boxes, and a ridiculously expensive latest model laptop. She narrowed her eyes suspiciously. "Are you poor or rich? Because you live like a caveman but own tech that costs 3 months of my salary." Ethan laughed, a soft laugh that revealed a faint dimple. "I'm just a minimalist. The laptop are for work." "What work? Destroying your neighbor's eardrums?" He laughed harder this time. "You're funny." "I am not funny, I'm angry." "I understand, I'll be more careful." Then he looked at her for a long moment, his voice dropping a notch. "I mean it." Olivia clenched her fists, gathered the last of her pride, and declared, "From now on, I'm starting a noise war." Ethan stayed still for a beat, then the corner of his mouth curved, slowly, dangerously. "War, huh? All right." Olivia spun around, hissing, "Let's see how long you survive." She marched back to her apartment and slammed the door like a warning shot, and the moment her back hit the wood, her heartbeat went wild. She whispered with despair and something she absolutely refused to name, "Damn it, why does he have to be that handsome?" The next morning, when a wash of soft, golden sunlight filtered through the curtains and stretched across the wooden floor like a gentle honey-colored veil, Olivia Turner felt absolutely none of the tenderness that such a pure little gift of the day usually carried, because right at 7 a.m. sharp, like an audible slap to her already exhausted soul, the hammer from apartment 4B started up again, each strike heavy and deliberate, as if he were being paid per nail driven into the earth. Wham, wham, wham! Olivia's eyes flew open in a state science might call mild shock, but the civilians of the world simply called driven to the brink of insanity. Her hair looked like a bird's nest after a hurricane, her heart pounding wildly as if asking, what divine reason justifies this man's existence on earth? She pulled the blanket over her head. The hammering pierced through it. She put on noise-canceling headphones. The hammering somehow got louder. She flung the blanket off, her pajama top askew, her lips pressed together, her eyes puffy with sleep deprivation, and exhaled a line that could have been written with the ink of pure tragedy. "I cannot believe this. He apologized last night. Last night." Rage rose inside her like an active volcano, and Olivia, without bothering to tie her hair or even put on proper shoes, marched straight to apartment 4B and began pounding on the door with every ounce of accumulated frustration from 2 weeks of torture. Thud, 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 thud. The door opened instantly as if Ethan had been standing right behind it, or worse, as if he recognized the knock and knew immediately it was her. Ethan Cole, hair adorably messy in that infuriating way only handsome men manage in the morning, a white t-shirt stretched over a solid chest, his brown eyes still sleepy but strangely bright with amusement, looked at her as though nothing whatsoever was wrong with his behavior. "Good morning, neighbor," he said in a voice so warm and deep that Olivia genuinely considered throwing a slipper at his face to counteract the unnecessary level of attractiveness. She pointed straight at the wall. "Did you forget? You apologized last night. You promised you'd be gentle." Ethan tilted his head, an expression so innocent it was downright irritating. "Right. You asked me to be quiet last night." Olivia blinked twice, analyzing that disguised act of wicked humor. "You mean you interpreted my request by time frame?" Ethan shrugged with the calmness of a man who genuinely saw no issue. "You said night. I understood night. This is morning. Words matter, Turner." Olivia stood frozen for a full second before erupting with a sentence that practically trembled in the air. "I hate you." Ethan smiled a little, one of those smiles that made her treacherous heart skip. "I'm getting used to that." There was something about this man that made every internal explosion in her head grow bigger by the minute. She was about to grab her phone to email a complaint to the landlord when she suddenly remembered. Her laptop was still dead from last night's coffee tragedy, and Ethan, as if reading her thoughts, crossed his arms and leaned against the door with a smug tone. "Your laptop's broken, isn't it? Hard to send an email that way." Olivia wanted to scream, to yell right in his face, to pound on the door FBI style all over again, but instead she spun around, slammed her own door so hard even the lock rattled, and declared silently to the universe, "The war has begun. Her laptop wasn't fixed yet? No problem. An angry woman always had at least 100 backup plans." A giant A3 sheet appeared on the door of 4A: quiet zone. Apartment 4A, no noise allowed. Violation equals war. Ethan passed by, read it, and laughed. Every time a sound came from 4B, Olivia blasted her speaker. "According to Oregon state law, noise that interferes..." Ethan shouted through the wall, "Appreciate the legal lesson, Turner. Knock, knock. Stop noise." Then she sprinted back to her apartment like a ninja. "Q!" From 4B, Ethan called out, "You okay? I've got ginger tea." "I don't need it." Clang, cling, cling, clang. Olivia screamed, "Ethan!" Ethan poked his head out. "Thought you could use a little meditation." "Meditation my ass. Tap, 5 seconds. Tap. Stop right now. This is the gentlest mode I've got," along with a note, "for calming purposes. 4B. Olivia nearly cried, from fury. Ethan merely smiled. "You look stressed today." And when she noticed the brand new $899.99 woodworking toolkit sitting at his door, the kind only someone with serious money would buy, she knew this war was nowhere close to over. Loud and rich. "Fantastic," she muttered. Ethan opened his door again, leaning one shoulder against the frame, eyes half teasing, half gentle. "Turner? What?" "This war is fun." Olivia wanted to throw her slipper at him, but her heart, traitorous as ever, thumped a little harder. Tuesday night opened with a cold wind carrying the smell of rain. Olivia Turner stood in the 4th-floor hallway, clutching a thick stack of papers she proudly titled "Noisy Neighbor Lawsuit," full detailed version. Her laptop had finally been repaired, the email was drafted, and with this printed copy submitted to the landlord, the 4A versus 4B war would reach a whole new level. She marched down the stairs, muttering under her breath, "This time he's done for. No one ruins my sleep and gets away alive." But as she reached the bottom of the stairwell, Olivia froze. At the far end of the hallway, by the entrance of the duplex building, a flickering light caught her eye, a flashlight beam. And then she saw Ethan, not the loud Ethan with power drills and wind chimes. Not the Ethan who banged on the wall every morning like he was waking the sun up. This one was a completely different person. He was kneeling beside Mrs. Mary from 2A, the tiny cotton-haired old lady who always handed out muffins to the residents. Tonight, she lay slumped against the wall, her face pale, breaths short and wheezy. Olivia forgot how to breathe. Ethan wasn't loud, and he wasn't fumbling. He was down on one knee, one hand holding the flashlight, the other checking her pulse with the smartwatch on his wrist. "Mrs. Mary, can you hear me?" His voice was low, warm in a way Olivia had never heard from the man who usually existed just to annoy her. Just breathe slowly. The ambulance is on the way. The old woman gave him a weak response, eyelids drooping, and Ethan leaned closer. It's okay, I'm right here. Olivia stayed in the shadows, instinctively slowing down, afraid to disturb something that mattered. Then the wail of sirens grew loud. Red and blue lights flooded the lobby as two paramedics rushed in, asked a few questions, and, following Ethan's calm directions, gently lifted the old woman onto a stretcher. Ethan walked beside her, hand on her shoulder to keep her calm. When the stretcher reached the ambulance, Olivia saw it clearly. He wasn't just being polite. He genuinely cared. The ambulance doors opened. A paramedic asked, "Where's her family? Anyone riding with her?" Mrs. Mary clutched Ethan's hand, her voice trembling. "Could you come with me?" He nodded without hesitation. "Of course." He climbed into the ambulance and sitting close to her, saying softly, "Lean on me. I'm not going anywhere." Just before the door closed, someone inside asked, "Does she have insurance? If she doesn't?" Ethan cut in, calm and steady, so calm that Olivia was stunned. "I'll cover the hospital bill." Olivia stood frozen. Wait, what? A young carpenter paying hospital bills? No hesitation? No flinching? For the last 2 weeks, she had assumed he lived minimally because he was broke, built his own furniture to save money, owned nothing but a table and a couple of plastic bins. Yet somehow he had a laptop worth a month of rent. It was odd, but she had shrugged it off. Weird guy, end of story. But paying hospital fees like that, not very struggling financially, not very careless jerk, not a very peace-destroying menace, as she enjoyed calling him. The ambulance doors shut, and the light caught Ethan's face, soft, reassuring, like this was something he did every day. The ambulance drove away, leaving Olivia standing alone on the cold tile floor. A breeze swept through, rattling the lawsuit papers in her hands. For the first time in 2 weeks, she wondered, maybe I've been too harsh. She stared down at the complaint form, then toward the disappearing ambulance. She stood on the ground floor steps for several minutes, watching the emergency lights fade into the distance. Her heart beat softly in a rhythm she shouldn't have felt at all. About an hour later, noises echoed in the hallway. She stepped outside just as 4B's door opened. Ethan had returned. His jacket was still damp with night mist. His hair, usually annoyingly perfect, was a tousled mess, strands stuck to his forehead. His chest rose and fell from running up the stairs. He looked exhausted, and good in a way that made Olivia blink twice. He slowed when he saw her. No teasing smirk, no raised eyebrow, no snarky comment. Just Ethan, unguarded. "Is Mrs. Mary okay?" Olivia blurted out before she could think. Ethan nodded, voice low and tired yet warm. "She's better. They're keeping her for observation. I just came back to grab a few things for her." Olivia had prepared herself for a fight, to rage, to become the 4A's sworn enemy. But looking at him like this, every battle plan evaporated. He didn't say anything else, just held her gaze for a brief moment. A silent thank you, a quiet understanding, as if he was surprised she cared at all. Then he nodded once and stepped inside. Olivia stayed in the strip of light spilling from his doorway, her heart softening without permission. For the first time, she was unable to submit the complaint. For the first time, she asked herself, am I sure he's just a noisy neighbor? Portland that night felt as though it had been swallowed whole by a curtain of rain so thick one could barely distinguish the sound of water pounding against the roof of the aging duplex from the sound of wind rushing through the wet branches outside, or from the tired exhale of a city too familiar with the unending November storms. Olivia Turner sat in apartment 4A, wrapped in a soft fleece blanket, trying to focus on a video titled "How to Handle Noisy Neighbors Without Breaking the Law." But she wasn't absorbing a single word. Her mind kept drifting back, involuntarily, to the image of Ethan from 4B the night before, carrying old Mrs. Mary down the stairs in the rain, drenched from head to toe, exhaustion clouding his eyes, yet somehow still too gentle with the frail neighbor he barely knew. She didn't want to think about him, didn't mean to remember, But on a rare, quiet evening like this, it was impossible not to replay the moment he gave her that small nod outside the hospital, one that had lingered in her chest longer than she wished. And just as she began settling into the fragile stillness, boom! Pang! A sound like an entire water tank collapsing straight into 4B thundered through the building, followed by a panicked yell. "Oh, you've got to be kidding me!" Olivia shot upright as if electrified, her heart pounding harder than the thunder outside. She set her cereal bowl aside, shoved her feet into slippers, and bolted into the hallway with an energy fueled by anger, concern, or some dangerous mix of both. She pushed open 4B's door without thinking, and immediately froze. Ethan's usually sparse apartment had been transformed into a miniature flood zone. Water gushed from the ceiling like a malfunctioning fire hose, spraying across the wooden floor, every drop catching the flickering yellow light of an overstressed lamp, now sputtering from water, splashing dangerously close to the outlet. The wooden cabinet Olivia had heard him hammering on for 3 straight days was now wobbling violently, tilted as if it were seconds away from collapsing. And in the middle of all that chaos stood Ethan Cole, half-dressed, his t-shirt clinging to one arm, his hair soaked and plastered to his forehead, broad shoulders and defined back glistening under the unsteady light, looking equal parts bewildered, infuriatingly attractive, and utterly helpless, like some rugged forest god being mocked by Poseidon himself. Olivia momentarily forgot how to breathe. "Ethan! What are you doing?" she yelled over the roar of water. Ethan whipped around, eyes widening when he saw her. "Turner? Back up. The floor's slippery." He barely finished the sentence before the water-swollen cabinet lurched forward, sliding straight toward her. Ethan lunged, grabbing Olivia's arm, and in the span of a heartbeat, her foot slipped on the soaked floor, dragging him off balance with her. Both of them went crashing down. Ethan hit the floor first, back slamming into the wet wood. Olivia landed on top of him. Water splashed up over their faces, and for a brief, disorienting second, time slowed as if someone had deliberately pressed pause. Her face hovered so close that one more inch would mean lips on lips. Ethan's breath warmed her chilled skin, brushing the side of her neck, sending an involuntary shiver down her spine, as though someone had whispered a secret too intimate right in her ear. Their eyes locked, and for the first time Olivia didn't see teasing mischief or the rebellious defiance she had associated with him for 2 weeks. What she saw was something softer, something nameless, tinged with surprise and a quiet sincerity that made the floor feel like it had vanished beneath her. "Are you hurt anywhere?" he asked, his voice low, rough, threaded with real concern. I'm fine." Olivia scrambled up quickly, though his hand lingered a moment longer on her arm than necessary. She stood, her pulse sprinting like a marathon runner. Did you not think to turn off the water?" Ethan laughed helplessly in the middle of the disaster. "You think I want to stand under this homemade waterfall? The shut-off valve is stuck under that cabinet. If you hadn't come in, I'd probably be drowning in here till morning." Heat rushed to Olivia's face despite being drenched from head to toe. Together they dragged the cabinet back, water splashing up their legs. Ethan twisted the valve hard, and the torrent stopped instantly. Silence dropped over the room like a heavy curtain. Both of them breathed hard, water dripping from their hair onto the floor in slow rhythmic taps. Ethan pushed his wet hair back from his forehead and let out a small laugh, one stripped of mischief, warm enough to make Olivia forget she was standing in ankle-deep water. "Thanks, 4A, my hero." Olivia pressed her lips together, trying to hide the way her heart was clawing its way up her throat. "I just didn't want this duplex floating down the Willamette River. Don't get the wrong idea." Ethan tilted his head, his voice dipping lower and his smile softening. "I'm not getting any ideas." She spun away immediately so he wouldn't notice her ears turning red. "Deal with the rest yourself." "Turner?" She paused, half turning back. "Walk slowly. The floor's still slick." Just one simple sentence. Yet it warmed her so deeply she felt as though he'd placed a hand directly over her heart and pressed into the very spot she'd kept carefully locked away. She didn't answer, just hurried back into her apartment, closed the door behind her, and leaned against it, chest rising and falling, water dripping from her hair down her neck. And with her heart pounding out of control, Olivia could only whisper one thing. What on earth is happening to me? The next evening, with rain still brushing lightly against the windows, as if Portland wasn't quite ready to recover from last night's storm, Olivia Turner stood in her kitchen, holding a steaming cup of ginger tea. The warmth seeped into her fingers, filling her with a strange sense of responsibility, or perhaps an indescribable nervousness, to do something a stubborn part of her had been protesting ever since she woke up. Bring something kind, even just a small cup of tea, to apartment 4B after the night they had practically collapsed on each other in a flood deep enough to raise goldfish. She took a deep breath, smoothed her hair, and stepped into the hallway, her chest a battlefield of irritation, confusion, and a softness she refused to name. It appeared whenever she remembered the way Ethan had looked at her after turning off the water valve, soaked, exhausted, yet still managing a smile that made forgiveness dangerously easy. She knocked 3 times, not as sharply as usual, hesitant even. The door opened slower than she expected, and there was Ethan. Not the drenched, chaotic version of him from the night before, not the half-shirtless hero trying to save a drowned cabinet, but a man in a light gray hoodie, hair still a little messy, eyes still carrying hints of fatigue. Yet his expression had softened, as if the storm had stripped away one layer of the stubborn shield he wore daily, especially around her. He blinked at the cup in her hand. For me? His voice was low, quiet enough to make her heart tilt sideways. She didn't know why she had to approach this morning with kindness. She handed him the tea, trying to keep her tone steady, but hearing instead a gentleness she never intended. I thought, after last night, you might catch a cold. Ginger tea is good for your throat. Good for... She stopped, cheeks flushing. For people who stand in floods. Ethan laughed, soft, warm, like it added a few degrees of comfort to every room in the duplex. Thank you, he said, slower this time, sincere without the usual teasing. About last night, thank you for helping me. Olivia was surprised he brought it up first, and even more surprised at the tone he used. Unshielded, unprovoking, no sarcasm anywhere. Just Ethan, honest and real, and she felt like she had slipped into a moment neither of them had allowed each other before. It's nothing, she replied, then added, because awkwardness demanded it. I just didn't want this place turning into an indoor water park. He laughed again, and the sound was gentle enough to tap at her heart. Would you like to come in for a bit? He asked. Not pushy, just a simple invitation between two people who once considered filing lawsuits over the sound of a falling nail. Olivia hesitated for a fraction of a second, not long enough to call resistance, and nodded. The apartment was still damp, but cleaner than she expected. The floor had been mopped, the wooden cabinets propped up to dry, and the scent of ginger rising from his tea mingled with the smell of wet wood. Oddly pleasant, she sat on one of his handmade wooden chairs, the very object she had once cursed as the primary source of disturbance, and realized it was actually beautiful, warm, and sturdier than she thought. Ethan stood for a moment, turning the cup in his hand, searching for words. Then he exhaled, a release that felt like something heavy slipping off his shoulders. I know I've been driving you crazy these past 2 weeks, he said, voice low, honest, compelling her spine to straighten just a little. This apartment, it needs a lot of fixing, and He paused, shoulders dropping, as if shedding an old weariness. I fix things all day, because it's the only time I don't have to think too much. Olivia looked up, her usual sharpness softening. You're stressed about something? Ethan braced his elbows on his knees, eyes drifting to the tea like it held the key to his memory. I don't talk about this to anyone, he began, soft but heavy enough to slow the air around them. But growing up, my house was always loud. My dad was an alcoholic. He didn't just break furniture. Olivia stilled. His gaze darkened, not with danger, but the quiet heaviness of someone who'd survived the dark for too long and only recently learned that light existed. I grew up with noises I couldn't control. Bottles shattering, chairs thrown, my mom crying in the bathroom, my dad yelling that we needed to behave better. The house was always chaos, and when I finally got old enough, I just wanted to get as far away from it as possible. He lifted his eyes, meeting hers directly. So now when I fix something, when I make noise, I feel like I can control my life. It's how I heal. Olivia felt something soften inside her, seeping through every layer of annoyance she had once wrapped around him, settling in a place she didn't know she had. Her voice came out slow, gentle as the rain outside. The noise you make might not be the worst thing in the world. Ethan looked surprised, thankful. I know I've bothered you a lot. Yes, she nodded. You are unbelievably annoying. He laughed, really laughed, unguarded and bright. But, she continued, I think I understand now. Silence settled between them, warm and calm like a cup of hot ginger tea. Ethan sat down across from her, placing his cup on the table. Neither of them noticed how the physical distance had shrunk to the closest proximity they'd ever shared in 2 weeks. Outside, the rain eased, falling in a slow, soothing rhythm, like the perfect soundtrack to a truce that required no contract, no declaration, only the quiet softening in the eyes of the person sitting across from you. This tea is really good, Ethan said quietly, a hint of relief in his tone. Yeah, I make it pretty well, she answered. Turner? Thank you for last night, and thank you for this morning. Olivia smiled openly for the first time without trying to hide it. I won't put up the quiet zone sign, temporarily. Ethan grinned, enough for a dimple to appear. I'll try to make less noise. Temporary truce, she said, extending her hand. He took it, his hand warm, strong, slightly rough, yet gentle enough to make her heart skip a beat. And maybe that was the first moment Olivia realized his presence didn't only disrupt her peace. It made her heart thump in a way that was sweetly and annoyingly off balance. They sipped their tea, listening to the steady rain, and for the first time since he moved in, Olivia realized that silence didn't always come from the absence of noise. Sometimes it came from the quiet peace of having someone sitting right beside you. That evening, after a day so long she wanted nothing more than to switch off every functioning sense, hide under a blanket, and let the world rotate without her involvement, Olivia decided to treat her exhausted face, with its deadlines, its cranky landlord, and its certain neighbor in 4B who had unintentionally made her heart experience several inconvenient emotional episodes, to a mint green sheet mask. She stood in the kitchen, lazily stirring a bowl of cereal with a spoon, her hair tied up in a loose high ponytail, her hoodie oversized enough to pass for either sleepwear or convenience store attire, when a knock sounded at the door. 3 taps, slow, a little hesitant, yet unmistakably intentional. She froze. Her heart tightened as if gently squeezed. Not right now, she whispered to the wet, shiny mask clinging to her face. Please, for the love of everything holy, not now. But the knock came again, firmer this time. She swallowed hard, tossed her spoon into the bowl like it was to blame for everything happening to her, and sprinted to the door with the chaotic speed of a woman who had completely lost control over her own life. She opened it just a sliver, just enough to ask, "What is it?" Then the door slid open a little wider because she saw him. Ethan Cole stood in the hallway, wearing that dark-fitted t-shirt that hugged his solid frame, hair slightly messed up in a way that looked accidental, but made her want to reach out and fix it. And his face, dear God, completely calm, completely unfazed, completely unbothered by the fact that she was standing there with a mask thick enough to rival a 3-layer crepe cake. He lifted his gaze and looked at her, and a slow smile curled at the corner of his lips, not mocking, not teasing, just warm enough to melt every piece of her like a marshmallow held over a flame. Olivia felt her pulse trickle away like a spring creek in early April. Uh, I, um, I'm doing skincare, she said, her voice jumping 3 octaves higher than normal. I can see that, Ethan replied, leaning lightly against the doorframe, his eyes gleaming with a kind of delight he wasn't even pretending to hide. It suits you. Olivia wanted to drop to the floor and live there permanently. Did you need something? She snapped, attempting to rescue what was left of her dignity. Ethan paused for a second, like he was choosing the exact right moment, then said slowly, each word clear and warm enough to be poured into a jazz melody and turned into a love song. Last night, you forgot something. Olivia narrowed her eyes. I didn't forget anything. I went home in a very clear, very... He cut her off with a small smile that effectively destroyed every logical argument she had prepared. You forgot to ask if I wanted to see you again. For 1 second, just one, Olivia's entire body lost all access to oxygen. She froze. Her pulse pounded like a drum roll. Her brain seemed to reboot. Ethan continued, his voice soft enough that leaning closer would have let her hear his heartbeat. I wanted to take you out, a real dinner, to apologize for the noise these past weeks, and to thank you for helping me that night, for the ginger tea, for... He paused, eyes locking with hers, something deeper and truer flickering through them. For being kinder than you pretend to be. Olivia felt the entire 4A4B hallway tilt around her like a slowly spinning carousel. She tried standing straighter, tried acting normal, tried pretending the mask drying on her face didn't make her look like a female Shrek. She cleared her throat. Are you sure? I mean, I look like this. And you're still asking? Especially because of that, Ethan said, the smile in his eyes warming into something almost impossible. It's a version of Olivia I haven't seen before. Well, that was it. Game over. She was done for. Olivia crossed her arms, tilted her head, forcing herself to reclaim at least an ounce of control. Fine, she said, raising her voice just enough to hide how violently her heart was pounding. Dinner, but I picked the place. I'm not going somewhere that'll need a ceiling repair afterward. Ethan laughed, a low, soft sound that made even the darkest corners of the hallway brighten. Wherever you want, he said, as long as you go with me. Don't use that voice, Olivia shot back, her own voice trembling slightly. That voice makes people say yes to you. I only need one person to say yes, Ethan replied, his eyes holding a tenderness that made her heartbeat tumble. Olivia opened her mouth to say something clever, or sarcastic, or strong, but her mind had turned entirely into one sentence. Damn it, I like him. She inhaled deeply, keeping her face as composed as possible, with the mask beginning to stiffen. Okay, Cole, I'll text you tomorrow at noon. Don't make noise in the morning, or the dinner's canceled. Well, Ethan lifted a brow. Another threat? Not a threat, Olivia said, stepping back. A reminder. Ethan laughed, nodded once, and murmured, Enjoy your skincare. Shut up. She closed the door, but not too hard, because her heart had already softened to butter. The moment the door clicked shut, she leaned back against it and slid down to the floor. Her mask fell with a soft plop onto her hoodie. Her heart pounded like a runaway racehorse. A breath escaped her, shaky and stunned. What is wrong with me? Meanwhile, in 4B, Ethan stood still for a moment, lips curved in a smile he couldn't fight off, his back against the wall, one hand absently tightening around the ginger tea he'd kept since the night before. He whispered to himself alone, And what's wrong with me? Olivia Turner, with all the pride and self-preserving instincts of a woman who has always maintained complete control over every tiny detail of her life, decided that if she absolutely had to go to dinner with Ethan Cole, the noisy neighbor who had somehow made her heart stumble into a rhythm she refused to acknowledge, then the date needed to take place at a restaurant that would at least make him slightly flustered, slightly insecure, slightly hesitant, so she could reclaim the upper hand he had accidentally stolen over the past few weeks. Thus she chose an Italian restaurant so expensive and so elegant that anyone stepping through its doors could immediately smell luxury essential oils swirling in the air, hear a soft piano serenade in the corner, and see amber lights glinting off wine glasses like a meticulously staged cinematic scene. But when Olivia pushed open the glass doors, fixed her hair, took a long, grounding breath to enter the evening, as though it were a critical court trial she had every intention of winning, what she saw nearly made her turn around and run. Ethan was waiting, dressed in a navy suit that fit perfectly enough to highlight his broad shoulders and strong frame. His hair brushed back through a few rebellious strands fell across his forehead in a way that made him look both polished and dangerously good for her self-control. except for one detail. His tie was completely backward. The moment was so absurdly endearing, Olivia almost burst out laughing, but she held it back with all the strength she had, because something inside her, the soft part she refused to name, found his backward tie misfortune not only harmless but undeniably charming, making him even more dangerously approachable in a way she could not afford. Ethan turned, his eyes locking onto hers, and a slow smile spread across his lips, time slipping out of sync for a heartbeat, before he glanced down at his tie and laughed. A warm, effortless sound that forced Olivia to turn away just to hide the smile tugging at her own lips. She could not let him see how quickly her defenses were melting. Once they were seated, Olivia had prepared herself to be the one rescuing Ethan from awkward situations. But instead, it was she who kept stumbling into moments that sent her heartbeat spiraling wildly. The way his gaze lingered on her, a fraction longer than necessary. The casual way he pulled her chair out without even thinking. Or the earnest explanation that the suit was an attempt to show respect for the date, which nearly made her trip over the chair in embarrassment. But the real shock hit when the waiter brought the menus and Ethan casually handed over his credit card as if by reflex, Olivia at first thinking he must have grabbed the wrong wallet, until she realized it was a platinum card, the kind normal people only see in YouTube videos titled, "What Billionaires Keep in Their Wallets?" She stared, stunned. You're paying up front?" Ethan simply shrugged, his voice gentle in the kind of way that completely ruined her composure. "I just don't want you to worry about anything tonight, but don't let the money make you think I'm any different. I'm still the noisy handyman you used to hate." That soft little sentence somehow stole the air from her lungs, because she realized she didn't hate him anymore. Or rather, she never truly had. Dinner began with mushroom spaghetti and creamy risotto, and just as Olivia was about to compliment the aroma, she accidentally knocked over her water glass, sending a wave across the pristine white tablecloth. Ethan rushed to help but yanked the tablecloth too hard, knocking every candle onto the ground, luckily extinguished on impact, which made the Italian owner storm over, eyes wild, shouting like a furious opera tenor, "Are you two in love or trying to destroy my restaurant?" Both of them flushed violently, wanting to disappear under the table, and once the owner stomped away muttering in Italian, they looked at each other and burst into laughter, the kind of laughter that shattered every last bit of tension and made them realize the chaos made the evening real. Closer and oddly perfect. The rest of the night, they shared the kind of truths people only reveal when they trust. Olivia's childhood in a family where excellence wasn't a goal, but a mandatory expectation. Ethan's past amid his father's thunderous rage, their fears, their wants, the things they had never said aloud to anyone. And when they stepped outside afterward, into the soft wash of dim streetlights, they found themselves standing very close, too close, until their breaths blended together like a quiet invitation. Ethan tilted his head slightly, his gaze falling to her lips, and Olivia closed her eyes, waiting for something she wouldn't dare name. When suddenly a kid ran past and kicked a ball straight into Ethan's leg, jolting them apart and shattering the moment like thin glass. They opened their eyes, stared at each other, then dissolved into laughter again, so hard they had to brace themselves against the wall. Breathless, Olivia managed, still laughing. "That was a truly disastrous date." Ethan looked at her, his eyes impossibly soft, so soft her heart ached. "But it's the best date I've ever had." And Olivia, even though she tried to hide it, felt exactly the same. That evening, Portland sank into the deep blue-violet palette of an early winter night, the kind of sky where the cold drifted down like a thin blanket settling across the city, softening every streetlight until it blurred into something quietly beautiful, something that made people slow their steps without noticing. Ethan appeared at Olivia's door at exactly the time he'd promised, hands tucked into the pockets of an old denim jacket. And though the warm hallway light brushed a familiar gold across his face, his eyes carried a hesitation she rarely saw in a man who usually projected so much unshakable certainty. "Ending a disastrous date by almost setting the restaurant on fire?" Olivia said, stepping out with a teasing smile. "And now you want to start another adventure?" "Not an adventure," Ethan replied with a voice so soft she had to really listen. "Just A place I think you'll like. And there's something I want to say, but not indoors." His last sentence made her pause, as if a strange, quiet breeze had just moved through the hallway. They got into his truck, old, slightly beaten, yet surprisingly clean, and Ethan drove toward the outskirts of the city. Behind them, Portland dimmed like someone was slowly turning down a light switch, giving way to the gentle dark of pine trees, damp earth after rain, and distant hills rising and falling under the moonlight like the slow breath of the night. He stopped at the base of a soft, grassy slope, the kind of hill where the sky opened wide with no buildings or power lines intruding. The moment Olivia stepped out, she inhaled deeply, taking in the cool scent of earth mixed with pine needles. And suddenly, she understood why Ethan had chosen this place. This was the kind of space where people said things they didn't have the courage to speak anywhere else. "So you brought me out here to kidnap me?" Olivia joked, though her voice was gentler than her usual teasing. Ethan laughed, quiet, warm, like the sound of a hand brushing across someone's skin. "If I wanted to kidnap you, I'd do it while you were asleep. Less resistance." She shot him a look, but the smile tugging at her lips betrayed her. They sat down on the grass, shoulders brushing lightly, a tiny accidental misalignment, yet enough for Olivia to feel the rhythm of her heartbeat shift above them. The sky glittered with stars, cool, silvery, so beautiful it made her feel small in the best way possible. Maybe that was why the truth felt easier here. For a long moment, Ethan didn't speak. He braced his hands behind him, tilting his face toward the sky, as if searching for a star that might hold the explanation for all the years he had carried more weight than anyone deserved. Then he finally spoke, slow, careful, like he feared saying it too quickly might break something fragile inside him. "You know, Turner, I've never been able to stay still, not because I like making noise or breaking things. It's just—" He swallowed the end of the sentence, something tight catching in his throat. "Every time I fix something, or hammer a piece of wood, or smooth out a rough surface, I feel like I'm building something sturdier than the past I came from." Olivia turned toward him, but stayed silent, waiting. "I grew up in a house," Ethan continued, eyes still on the stars, "where a door slamming wasn't because of the wind, where yelling wasn't because someone was excited, and glass shattering was never an accident." A chill ran across her skin. "When I was a kid," he said, voice roughened by a memory far too old yet far too close, "my father used to lock me in a room for hours, sometimes all night, just because he was irritated by something. Anything. No one opened the door for me. No one heard me pound on the walls." Olivia felt her heart pull tight, as if someone had reached inside and closed a hand around it. "I thought, if I could invent something that kept a kid from being trapped like I was, then at least that part of the memory might fade." She blinked, surprised. "You mean—" "I invented the safety lock," Ethan said, finally turning to her. His eyes held a mix of pride and pain, glowing faintly under the moonlight. "A lock that lets children in abusive homes open a door from the inside if they need to. The system was bought for way more money than I ever imagined earning." He let out a small laugh, one that wasn't joyful at all. "But when the contract was signed, when I saw the number in my account, I didn't feel happy. I just felt like that same kid again, standing in front of a door that wouldn't open, still pinned to the past, still suffocating." The breeze swept across the hill, carrying the smell of damp grass and cold pine, as if even nature had slowed down to listen. Ethan lowered his head. "I thought I'd never get out of it." For the first time since she'd known him, Olivia saw him without the challenging grin, without the stubborn bravado, without the loud, messy ways he hid the cracks. She saw someone simply trying to hold himself together. She spoke with a softness that startled even herself. "I'm afraid of noise because I grew up in a house that was always like a boiling pot. My parents fought about everything, every clatter of dishes, every window slamming shut. It felt like my heart was trying to jump out of my chest." She looked down at her own hands. "I hate noise because it always meant someone was about to hurt someone." Ethan turned toward her, slowly, as if needing to absorb every word. Olivia smiled, unmasked, unguarded. "So you're not the only one running from your past. Then she reached for his hand, gently, cautiously, almost afraid he'd pull away, but he didn't. You can escape poverty, escape debt, escape the walls you grew up in, Olivia said, her voice quiet but steady. But you won't escape yourself until you let yourself be happy. The words settled into the quiet on the hill, under the shimmering sky, between two hearts tired of running. And in that moment, they looked at each other as if they'd finally found the shelter they had been searching for all along. Ethan didn't answer with words. He just tightened his grip around her hand, just enough for Olivia to know he had opened a door he'd never dared to approach before. And on that hill, for the first time, two hands that had once trembled because of their past held each other like a promise for the future. Olivia Turner had not intended to cry. Truly, she hadn't. She had walked into Pioneer Place Mall as casually as possible, hair tied neatly back, crossbody bag, a skincare shopping list on her phone. And after a night so sweet it left her floating, she felt lighter than she had in weeks, as if every noise, every argument, every wall between her and Ethan had begun to dissolve under Portland's golden lights. Then she saw him, Ethan Cole, that afternoon, standing outside the most expensive jewelry store in the mall, with a blonde girl. The girl smiled at him, one of those soft smiles women reserve only for their men, and it felt like someone hurled a stone straight into Olivia's chest. They walked inside, standing close beneath the showroom brilliance. The girl touched his arm lightly. Ethan said something, his expression gentle. Too gentle, too familiar. Then he pointed at a velvet box. The girl nodded, like they were choosing something together. For each other. Olivia felt her heart hit the floor. She spun around and walked away, steps too quick to stay dignified, forcing down the ache slicing through her ribs. Echoes of old heartbreak roared inside her. All the men who started with warmth and ended with indifference. She told herself she was stupid. So stupid. Stupid to think a noisy handyman could be good, steady, and honest. But he wasn't simple. He had a platinum card, luxury jewelry, a gorgeous blonde girlfriend. He had just been performing for her. 3 days later, Ethan knocked. Once, twice, 3 times. Olivia rooted herself on the sofa, silent, swallowing the fire burning behind her sternum. By the 7th knock, loud enough to threaten the hinges, Ethan nearly roared, "Olivia, open the door! Why are you avoiding me?" She shot up like someone had yanked an invisible string and opened the door. Ethan stood there, breathing hard, hair wild, his expression equal parts furious and terrified, as if he'd run driven by his heart, not his legs. But Olivia spoke first, her voice a blade even she found sharp. "We're not a good match." Ethan froze like he'd been slapped. Olivia went on, eyes fixed anywhere but his, afraid the truth in his would shatter her. "You fit better with people like that. Beautiful, polished women, girls who walk into expensive stores with you, people who belong in your world. Not me." Ethan tried to speak, but Olivia raised a trembling hand. "I won't make a fool of myself. I won't fall for someone who already belongs to someone else." Silence fell, cold and cutting. When Ethan finally spoke, his voice was low, raw, hurting. "You think all of that was real?" Olivia bit her lip, didn't answer. Ethan braced a hand against the doorframe, took a shaky breath, then met her eyes, so intensely she nearly stepped back. "That blonde girl is my best friend. I brought her to help me pick a gift for you. You." He reached into his pocket and pulled out the velvet box she'd seen. Opening it slowly, he revealed a delicate silver necklace, its pale blue stone catching the hallway light with a softness that made Olivia's chest ache. "This," Ethan said carefully, "is for you. I chose it because I thought it would match your eyes whenever you get mad at me. And I asked for help because I've never bought jewelry for someone who made my hands shake before." He paused, the words catching. "Olivia, yes, I have money, but I've never felt good enough for anyone until you showed up and yelled at me every morning." His voice cracked. "You say we're not a match, but I've never matched with anyone more." The ground shifted beneath her. She let out a trembling breath. "Ethan." He stepped closer. so close she could hear the uneven rhythm of his breathing. "Olivia Turner," he whispered, "I like you. Too much. Too long. Too clearly. To the point where standing here hurts." A silence stretched, soft as silk, tight as a drawn string. Olivia opened her mouth to speak, but Ethan lifted a hand, cupping her cheek, slow enough that she could count each racing heartbeat. "Unless you push me away," he murmured, "I'm going to do this." Then he kissed her. The first kiss detonated like a storm held back far too long. Fierce, deep, desperate, releasing, tender, heartbreakingly sweet. Olivia wrapped her arms around his neck, pulling him closer as if loosening even a fraction would undo everything they just admitted. Ethan held her as though she were the only safe place he had left in the world. That kiss was war and surrender, anger and affection, an ending to every misunderstanding and the beginning of something entirely new. That Sunday opened with a softness so unfamiliar that Olivia barely recognized herself. No simmering irritation over noise. No three-page mental drafts of emails ready to be sent. No stomping across the hallway to exchange verbal fire like two sworn enemies trapped in the same building. Instead, there was a feeling as light as a morning, steeped in pale sunlight, fresh coffee, and something that resembled hope. She walked toward apartment 4B with a bag of groceries held in her arms, feeling strangely as if she were carrying her heart over to someone else's home. And when Ethan opened the door, hair tousled, t-shirt a little wrinkled, smile warm and golden before he even said hi, Olivia suddenly understood how people could fall in love over the smallest, quietest moment. "Come in," Ethan said, his voice low and gentle, as if this was a ritual he'd secretly been waiting to begin all morning. In the kitchen, Olivia rolled up her sleeves and tied her hair back. Movements so familiar to her they were practically muscle memory. And Ethan instantly realized he was about to witness something sacred, a woman who truly knew how to cook. He stood beside her, trying to help, except Ethan Cole's help always resembled enthusiastic sabotage. While Olivia rinsed vegetables with the delicate touch of someone petting a small kitten, Ethan grabbed a bunch of kale and practically baptized it in the sink. Olivia turned around at the exact moment water splashed everywhere, her eyes widening. "Ethan, are you trying to wash it or hold a spiritual cleansing ceremony for it?" Ethan froze. "I'm washing it normally." "Normally for you," Olivia replied, half exasperated but impossibly gentle. "Let me do it." She worked and he watched. One person is graceful, one person is clumsy, one person moving in her element, one person looking like it was his first day of culinary kindergarten. And strangely, they fit. When Olivia needed seasoning, Ethan handed her the spoon. When she chopped vegetables, he set the bowls beside her at the perfect time. When she reached for the pot lid, Ethan somehow passed her the right one, even though he had absolutely no idea how he'd guessed correctly. It felt like they had stood in this kitchen together hundreds of times, but only realized it today. But the moment that stunned Olivia was when she reached up to the high cabinet for the salt. And Ethan watched from behind, brow furrowing as she stretched on her toes like she was trying to pluck a star from the sky. Without saying a word, Ethan disappeared into the living room and returned with his woodworking toolkit. He measured, removed screws, adjusted hinges, and lowered the cabinet all in 5 minutes. When he finished, he patted the cabinet's edge like an artist admiring his finished sculpture. "Done." Olivia looked at the cabinet, then at him, then back at the cabinet, now perfectly lowered so she could reach it effortlessly. "You fixed that for me?" she asked, her voice half teasing, half quietly struck in the heart. Ethan flushed, actually flushed, gripping the screwdriver until his knuckles whitened. "Yeah, you know, for convenience." She covered her mouth to hide a smile, her heart turning to a warm marshmallow. While waiting for the food to finish cooking, Ethan opened his laptop to show her a sketch, his dream house, the one he designed after selling his invention. The house was bright and spacious, with a long wooden porch, large windows, and an office that opened out toward the valley. So beautiful that Olivia felt like she was looking at a childhood dream drawn by a boy who had grown up inside a house filled with fear and shouting. "Why haven't you built it?" she asked. Ethan brushed a fingertip across the screen, his voice so low it sounded like he was speaking only to himself. Because I kept thinking, if I built a place I truly called home, the past would come knocking on its door again. Olivia lifted her gaze, her eyes soft as if veiled with a thin layer of morning mist. Home isn't where the past chases you, she said. Home is where someone wants to be with you. Ethan didn't speak for several seconds. Maybe he was inhaling a new kind of air, the kind called hope. Later that afternoon, rain began to fall suddenly, violently enough that the entire street seemed to tremble. At the second streak of lightning slicing across the sky, Olivia dropped the dish towel. By the third, she nearly curled in on herself. Thunder always dragged her back to childhood nights, hiding in a corner to escape her parents' fights. Then she heard 3 gentle knocks. She opened the door to find Ethan standing there, holding a small flashlight. I thought maybe you wouldn't want to be alone with Thunder like this, he said, voice warm and honest in a way that left no room for misunderstanding. The lights went out right after he said it. The whole neighborhood plunged into deep blue darkness. Ethan stepped inside, sitting beside her on the sofa, close enough that one breath separated them. After a few quiet minutes, he spoke softly, as if confessing something more important than anything he'd said before. For the first time, I don't want to fix anything. I just want to sit next to you. Olivia rested her head on his shoulder, closing her eyes, listening to his heartbeat mingling with the rain outside. For the first time, she whispered, noise doesn't scare me anymore. Not when you're here. Their hands found each other in the dark, tentative at first, like they were afraid to break something fragile, but firm enough to say they had finally found the right person. And in that moment, they both understood that every argument, every loud crash, every ridiculous battle before this had only been the prelude to this exact second, when 2 former enemies finally realized they had found a home in each other. The new house sat on a piece of land just high enough above the road to see the pale green hills rolling in the distance, where the afternoon sun poured lazily, softly, as though even nature understood this wasn't simply a building, but something deeper, warmer, almost a healing spell crafted from wood, sunlight, and 2 hearts finally brave enough to admit they had found each other. Olivia stepped out of the car, the late spring breeze brushing a cool breath against her cheek, waking her senses, but not enough to steady the flustered rush inside her chest at the sight in front of her, Ethan's dream house, the one he once only dared to sketch on his computer, tucked away in a folder he never opened, was now standing tall, real, almost complete. And he was there at the door in a white t-shirt and worn jeans, sawdust still on his hands, wearing the expression of a boy bringing someone special to watch fireworks he built himself. You actually built it? Olivia breathed, unable to contain the awe. Ethan rubbed the back of his neck, exhaling a mix of pride and shyness, watching her like he was waiting for approval he didn't dare ask for. Yeah, built it for myself, and maybe for someone I'm hoping will stay longer than my noise ever does. Olivia's cheeks heated instantly, but before she could turn away, Ethan opened the door and led her inside. A space so wide and bright, she had to hold her breath before she could even fully grasp it. Sunlight streamed in through the oversized windows, filling the living room with the scent of fresh wood. High ceilings, sloped beams, walnut floors polished to a reflective sheen. Like sunlight gliding over a lake, every detail carried Ethan's touch. Thoughtful, purposeful, and unmistakably his. Yet also full of a warmth Olivia knew hadn't been there before her. Come here, Ethan said, voice trembling slightly as if he were holding the most important moment of his life in his hands. He guided her toward the patio doors, where the breeze was stronger, where the valley below stretched out like nature's blessing. And there, hanging from a hook, was a brand new wooden sign. Olivia read it aloud, laughing and almost crying all at once. No noise, unless it's kissing! She turned to him, eyes wide with amusement and wonder. What on earth was he doing? Ethan smiled a nervous smile that couldn't hide the sheer anticipation trembling beneath it, then reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. He opened it to reveal a simple yet exquisitely crafted ring, the kind that light itself paused to admire. Olivia Turner, he began, voice deep and layered with emotion strong enough to pull even the bravest person off balance. If anyone ever told me my hammering is annoying, I'd believe them immediately. If someone said I'm too loud, I'd admit that too. But if you tell me those noises make you feel safe and happy, that's great. Want to stay beside me? Then I'll build 100 more cabinets and hammer 1,000 more nails, if it means I get to have you for longer than just a season. Olivia let out a trembling laugh, overwhelmed. Ethan lowered to one knee, eyes looking up at her like this was the first time he'd dared to look directly into the future. Would you take my noise with you for the rest of your life? Olivia didn't answer with words right away. She stepped closer, placing her hand on his sawdust-dusted cheek, and felt her heart soften, lighten, and stretch wide like sunlight filling her ribcage. Yes, she said, voice shaky but certain. If that noise is ours. He slid the ring onto her finger with hands that had built so many solid things, but now trembled just to hold something smaller and infinitely more precious. They fell into each other's arms, standing in a dream home, not yet finished, but already fit to be a future. The following weekend, Ethan stood on the new front porch, hammer in hand, adjusting the railing to the exact angle he'd obsessed over for weeks. Olivia sat on the swing by the door, holding a warm cup of coffee, legs gently swinging with the breeze like she had belonged there for years. You know, she teased with a playful sparkle in her eyes, noise isn't so bad anymore. Ethan set down the hammer, walked toward her, and before she could take another sip, he wrapped her in those strong arms she'd grown so fond of, and kissed her, long and sweet, as if trying to leave the imprint of that kiss on the sky itself. I'll make all the noise in the world, he murmured against her lips, voice deep, warm, overflowing with happiness. If that's what keeps you here. Olivia laughed softly, resting her head against his chest. The breeze danced. Sunlight shimmered. The hammer struck again. Tap, tap, tap. But now each hit echoed like the heartbeat of a home being finished by love. And in the sound of their laughter blending with the rhythm of the hammer on the hillside, Olivia knew one thing for sure. This was happy noise, the one sound she wanted to hear for the rest of her life.